Lily James defends sex scene in Pam and Tommy as essential. I really don't know how they were going to do this without putting this in there. It does also speak to this weird return. Like we were just talking about Puritanism and like how much society has changed, referring to Janet Jackson. Yet in here we're talking about real life incidences, and somehow this scene was supposed to they're not supposed to take the artistic. They're supposed to take the artistic integrity out of it for the sake of people's feelings. So it says Lily James has publicly defended the steamy sex scenes in her upcoming TV series based on the volatile relationship between Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee. Every time I say Tommy Lee, I want to say Tommy Lee Jones, but I don't.
Someone else.
But very different.
What is Tommy Lee known for?
He's a rock star.
Oh, okay.
The hotly anticipated show is set to air on Wednesday, February 2nd, and stars Lily as Pamela Anderson alongside co-star Sebastian Stan, who is set to play the Motley Crue drummer Tommy, otherwise known as Tommy Lee. Early reviews suggest watchers will be subject to a number of saucy sex scenes in the show, with a particular focus on the infamous 90s sex tape between Pamela and Tommy that was leaked to the public. That's literally what she's famous. Okay, it's not what she's famous for. She's famous for a lot of things, but it's what she's infamous for. Absolutely.
She started as a Playboy bunny.
Yes. Well, she started in Baywatch. But,
yeah, but she's also known for that too.
Lily told The Sun, quote, "We felt the sex scenes had to be part of the story and had to be essential to the script in progressing their relationship and looking at what happened, especially if they're looking at it from if it's supposed to be a perspective of like how the public saw them." Like that's a big part of it. It says it was really great. It was really great, constant conversation, and nothing was set in stone. Lily revealed she did heaps of research on the Baywatch star in order to prepare for the role. She said, quote, "She was one of the biggest stars on the planet and an icon. I got a lot out of this. It was definitely the biggest acting challenge of my life. It felt alive. I really loved that." The British actress even admitted that her regret in not stealing the infamous red swimsuit from the costume department she was filming. I want you to look at this picture of her. She looks exactly like her.
Yeah, I saw a trailer for this.
It's creepy how
Wild.
much she looks like. Sebastian Stan looks kind of like Tommy Lee. She looks exactly like her.
I hope someone saw this actress and was like, you know who you could play, and then they wrote the movie afterwards.
I just want to point out, have you ever watched the TLC TV show My Greatest Obsession?
No.
My Weird Obsession?
Thank you.
No, I haven't.
No.
Oh, okay.
But I know the name of the show. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, so basically there's a girl that did plastic surgery to look like Pamela Anderson, and she traveled all the way to LA, to Hollywood to cast, be a part of Hollywood, because she was so into Pamela Anderson so much that she basically said, "I can be an actress. I act like Pamela Anderson." And they're like, "Okay, can you show us your pitch?" And she was acting like Pamela Anderson, and they're like, you can't do this. We're not gonna hire you because Pamela Anderson is kind of old and it's not as popular as you think it is. So bye.
She could do it on Hollywood Boulevard, the way women be Marilyn Monroe and Charlie Chaplin.
Pamela Anderson impersonator.
Yeah. She kind of does that. She does that not on that road. She does it online.
Okay.
So that's how she makes her money. But imagine her now going I auditioned for this and they didn't hire me for this.
I can't tell if this one here is her or Pamela Anderson.
No, it's her.
So it doesn't have a caption on it?
It just gives credit. That's so creepy. It says... the British actress even admitted, so it says, she revealed, "I asked to keep it and they said no. I should have just stuck it in my handbag." She's right. She should have. Don't ask permission, seek
apologize
forgiveness.
later, yeah.
Pamela and Tommy were bound on a whirlwind romance as they married in Cancun just 6 weeks after they met in December 1994. The pair were then embroiled in a sex tape scandal and filed a $10 million lawsuit in an attempt to prevent the tape from being published. Even in 94, you couldn't prevent this stuff from getting out. Imagine thinking you had what's that one? It was one of the Kardashians is trying to get one of her an edited photo of her offline.
Yeah.
Is that Chloe? That's
yeah.
It's somebody imagine thinking you can put the genie back in that bottle. You cannot. It is not possible. I also want to point out, did you know that Lily James is the sixth cousin of George Bush?
Really? That's a weird
fun fact. Does he make a cameo in this movie?
That would be awesome. I mean, he would have been... No, he wouldn't have been president yet, but Dad...
he could be in the campaign.
Herbert Walker was the dad, right?
Yes.
Yes,
I don't know.
W. Yeah.
HW.
Yeah. So it says, however, the suit was eventually dropped, and the pair called off their marriage in 1998. The lawsuit, not the swimsuit. The two share sons, Brandon 25 and Dylan 24. Imagine being their kids. I wouldn't want to be famous, man.
Lots of former Playboy bunnies have kids. Hugh Hefner has children.
But when we talked about that very recently, it says, but if then you look at this up and look at how much Pamela Anderson still ends up in, all these articles are 4 years old, a year ago, 2 years ago, but they go back, and it makes you think just how long she's been part of the public eye, even as she had that famous roast. I think that they did a roast of Pamela Anderson that I think was very popular.
I mix Pamela Anderson up with Anna Nicole Kidman pretty regularly.
Yes. I get her, and I also think of when you think of this era. Okay,
you're saying oh, they're talking about her. I was like, didn't she die?
Think of Anna Nicole, think of her, and then think of Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love. They all kind of have the same look. It's very mid '90s. So, what do you think about is it weird that they wanted them to take the scene out? That there's people that thought that it wasn't necessary?
My general opinion on sex in writing or in movies or TV is I like to leave a lot of room for director's choice, whether they want to have a graphic sex scene or not. Obviously within the bounds of what's pornography and what's not. But I think that sex sells, and so there is an instinct to put sex scenes in because they think it'll draw more viewers in, right?
Yeah.
And to that end, I always think, personally, I'd rather, does it actually advance the story? I could see clips of the sex tape maybe are necessary, right?
Yes.
Is it just scenes of them wildly hooking up, throughout the romance? Do you actually have to show them literally having sex, or can you show them, on their way to the bedroom, or are there ways to artistically depict this? And again, that's personal preference, because I think that relying too heavily on reenacted sex can be maybe a way to give something more tension than it actually has naturally.
Yep.
Sometimes
leaving it out can be. I don't know if that necessarily works in a story like this about a relationship this tumultuous. I feel like a way to show
it really depends. I mean, that's the thing. Are these incidents really fueling? Are they giving you an insight into the way these characters? And I know they're real people, but in this show, interacted, or is it just look at this hot couple doing whatever? That maybe is more to try and draw in an audience, which I don't care for as much.
I find it interesting here. It says Tommy Lee approved of the series being made and discussed it with Sebastian Stan. I would like to know whether Pamela Anderson approved of the series being made. I wouldn't be able to answer that.
I mean, wouldn't they say it if she had?
Yeah, they got her seal of approval.
And if she didn't consent, or I assume she had to consent on some level, because portraying her story and her likeness. I mean, I know she's a public figure, but I wonder. I don't know.
So there
are legal barriers.
There's a thing here. It says Lily James, Pam and Tommy explore sex tape scandals, double standards, and sexism. Harsher fallout for Anderson. I think part of that's because as a sex symbol, the act of sex in this case, it is. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with double standards for women and men, but as a woman who is a sex symbol, it kind of hits to the core of what her marketable skills were in the industry. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. That he's selling rock and roll, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but the rock and roll is the paramount role of his job. His personal life comes into it. Maybe it adds to his character. It is odd that as somebody who is a literal sex symbol, for her it doesn't.
See, I think that people who idolize someone as being very sexy, or they fantasize about them, depictions of them having sex with someone else are therefore upsetting, because you build this weird attachment to it, and it feels like a form of betrayal to some people. And I think that's deeply subconsciously psychological, but I wonder if there is this relationship between how people perceived her and fantasized her versus the reality of who she was. They
say never live up to expectations,
right? And
anyways.
also that's to me one of the dangers of overtly coveting and fantasizing about someone like that who you don't really know.
Erotomania, right?
Yeah.
When you have you imagine you have a relationship with a celebrity and you don't. When you think of you're young, when you think of Pamela Anderson, what comes to mind to you?
Baywatch. Because American Dad made a parody episode where Roger pretends to be Pamela Anderson because he wanted to be part of Baywatch, but he didn't realize the show was already canceled.
But that's fascinating. Like to the younger generation. So her knowledge of this person isn't firsthand through the work she's done. Pam Anderson was an actress. I mean, she didn't just do Baywatch. She did other stuff too. She did the show VIP. I vaguely remember.
Yeah,
and
but she was
Barbarella
also
and. But I'm saying, but your knowledge of her comes from an interpretation of her from a third party.
Well, also I remember her from Scary Movies, where she was in one spoof where she was like a superhero, and she was pretending to be Mrs. Fantastic.
Mrs. Fantastic. She also what was she was in the movie Barbarella.
I think so. I think I passed by it when I was looking on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
I've never
Barbed
seen
Wire. I'm sorry, not Barbarella. Barbed Wire. Yeah, Scary Movie. Like her most recent thing is 18 and over, which is in 20. It says 28. No, it's in post production.
Oh wait, no way. She was in the Scooby Doo movie.
Apparently.
No way.
Invisible Girl from 2008. So she's got stuff, like she's still working in the industry. Like most of the stuff, it's smaller, but that's music video, package. So she's RuPaul music video, Almost Famous TV series. I don't even remember them making an Almost Famous TV series. So it's not like she's not working. She's still a part of the industry. It is crazy to me. Like, I imagine that this has got to be difficult. Like, this is why I would never want to be a celebrity. Not because of how hard it is in the moment, but then you have to be second guessed and armchair quarterbacked about your entire life 20 years later by artists who are now trying to make their own name for themselves in the industry. It's like a vicious cycle that will eventually it will come back around to you. So,
but I don't know. Like, good for her. She's still working.
Yep. So I don't know. That's I imagine that's very difficult. Like to be in an industry where you're, like you said, you're reliant on your image as a sex symbol, and then as that changes as you grow older, you have to adapt. And you have
it's just to be like. I mean, it's private. I'm sure she did not want that tape to get out.
No, she didn't. I'm sure.
And then to be like, well, you're a sex symbol, so you shouldn't care. Like, no, that's not fair.
And the guy's just like, I don't care. I'm sure, like for him, that just boosts his image as a rock star and and a sex symbol. So there is a double standard there. Like she's literally known for being a sex symbol, so is he, but in a different way.
Well, and like in some ways, maybe it's like a boon to his career, especially if people didn't know about him or like whatever. Whereas like for her, it's like you can't really get over it. I've heard actresses talk about like nudity clauses in contracts. Like once you appear nude on camera, like even whatever aspect of your body is out there, like there is no coming back from that, and it's very difficult to then be like, well, I won't do it again, because like you already did it.
Yep. I'm sure that some of them change, like if after if they've had kids, or they just get old, they've got kids now and they don't want that.
Or just like, what if you don't want to have to be like, if you were a talented actor or actress and it was like coming down to you or someone else for the role, and they're like, well, would you be willing to appear partially nude on camera? And you said no, and they're like, well, we're giving it to the other person then. That's like a question, is like, does the story need that shot to exist? Or like, is that sort of this desire to push the boundary on exposure, kind of like we talked about with Janet Jackson? Like our idea of like what we need to see physically from our actors has changed a lot over time.
Yeah.
There was I now I wish I remembered what it was. I was reading an article about somebody who recently, I think it wasn't from Yellow Jackets, but somebody, because that doesn't have a season 2, somebody else who was talking about how they had to amend their contract in season 2 for a show because they felt that they couldn't amend their contract, but they asked the director, can you please lessen the amount of nudity from my character? I would appreciate it. And then you have to worry about whether the director's like, can I work with this? Will it change will it fundamentally change the show?
And if you already signed a contract, like they could say no.
Yep. They could just say no and you got to do it. So,
and you've already put your physical form out there already. Like,
and
there's no taking it back.
And those clauses, like in the show Power, all the actors, men and women, had to sign nudity clauses, and you couldn't get out of it. Like, you had to do it. So, Game of Thrones, stuff like that. So, I don't know. I think that this is these are topics that like almost all require more than just 20 minutes of talk. Like all of these you could go on for hours.
It's just a reoccurring theme that I think we'll all be struggling with for, the next decade.
We will have this conversation again regarding somebody else, and we'll say it in a different way.
Kim Kardashian TV show. How she became famous.
That will be a thing eventually. That will be a thing. What would it be
I think
called?
it's called Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
I've heard of that.
Well,
I've heard.
Oh
There's
my
some
goodness.
clip of her being like, I just wish I could do a documentary about my life, and her mom's in the background being like, yeah, maybe you should call it Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
Yeah.
Imagine if there was a way to make a show about your life from day to day. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.